Right. So we start with Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga, then Geshe will lead the way for refuge and bodhicitta. For those of you who have the booklet in front of you, it's found in page number 7. From the heart of the savior of the 100 deities of the Shita, on the peak of a cloud of resembling clump of extremely white fresh curd, king of Dhamma, omniscient, lost and Drakpa, please come here together with your sons. In the sky before me on a lion throne, lotus and moon, my pure, perfect, pure Guru smiles with delight. Supreme field of merit from a mind of faith, please abide for 100 eons to spread the teachings. Your holy mind is the intelligence that understands the full extent of objects to be known. Your holy speech with an excellent explanation is an ear ornament for those of good fortune. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful with glory renowned. To you are meaningful to see, hear, and remember are prostrate. Pleasant drinking water, various flowers, fragrant incenses, lights, scented waters, and so forth. Oceans of cloud-like offerings, both actually arranged and mentally emanated. I offer to you the supreme field of merit. Whatever known virtue of body, speech, and mind, especially those opposite to the 3 vows that I've collected from beginning this time, I confess each and every one with fervent regret from my heart. You strove for much learning and practice in this degenerate age and made your freedoms and richnesses meaningful by abandoning the 8 worldly concerns. Savior, we sincerely rejoice in your extensive deeds. Perfect, pure, holy gurus from the billion clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of the Dhammakaya, please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dhamma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued exactly as they need. May whatever virtue I've collected benefit the teachings alone transmigratory beings, and in particular may it cause the essence of the perfect, pure, lost and Drakpa's teaching to shine forever. Sashi Poki Junshi Meto Tamri Ramling Shi Ni de Gem Padi Sangye Shindu Mikte Owa Yiro Kunamda Shin La Chupasho. Sorry, by the merits of having offered this mandala to Lama Tsongkhapa and his 2 sons, may I, my family members, and all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of the victorious one, Losang Drakpa, where the morality of eminently pure way of life was courageous in the extensive conduct of the sons of the victorious ones, and accomplish the yoga of 2 stages and supreme bliss on emptiness. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyatayami. By the force of having fervently requested in this way, hollow beams of white light are emitted from the hearts of the perfect pure father and sons, and combining into one, enter my crown. White nectar, the color of milk, flows from the opening of the tube of white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harms, negative karmas, obscurations, and imprints without exception. My body becomes as pure and clear as crystal. So we're going to do the 5-line Mixama in verse number 13. We're going to do it 3 times. Mimetse weta chechen rezi, jime kembe wampo jambe yan, pumalo zomze sanweda, kanchen kebe tunge tungapa, losandra beshav la sowa de, mimetse weta chechen rezi, jime kembe wampo jambe yan, pumalo zomze sanweda, kanchen kebe tunge tungapa, losandra beshav la sowa de, mimetse weta chechen rezi, jime kembe wampo jambe yan, Dopo malu jomze sanweda, kanchen kebe tsugen tsongapa, losandra peshavla sowa de.
Sangye Jodam Tsoji Chonam La Sanju Bardu Dandi Kapsu Chi Dagi Chi Jibin Tsonam Ji Drolam Benshi Sangye Drubara Shu Sangye Jodam Tsoji Chonam La Sanju Bardu Dandi Kapsu Chi Dagi Chi Jibin Tsonam Ji Drolam Benshi Sangye Drubara Shu Sanji
Chandan
Chodan
Tsogi
Tsoji
Chonan La
Chonla Chanchu
Chanchu Badu
Bardu Dani
Dani
Kyabsun
Kyabsuchi
Dagi
Dagi
Chushi
Chushi
Jibin
Gibe
Tsonum Ji
Tsonogi
Drolam
Drola
Ben
Fenchi
Sanji
Sangye
Drubaran
Drupa
Shu Kangi Tuzi Nizone Dawa Tamji Bambi Chere Dambi Chun Denzi Bi Kodam Kela Changze Lo Good morning everyone. Puchinjun Mi Hawi.
La.
Kuni Puchinjun Mi Kasa. Havas.
Ben and Georgie, remind us what the name is of your
Sorry.
youngest? Chef. How old are you? 9. Growing bigger and stronger.
Ko rikpope yakbu yordasra.
Mm.
Kandu chedegda. Kandu semusani.
Mm.
Semusan dingi middle rikpo ko shu yor segors ngazu pepe kagela.
So Geshe reckons that you're a smart boy, really smart boy, because at least in Tibetan culture, Geshe saw you kind of gnawing on your fingernail. In Tibetan culture, it says that someone that does that is really smart. It's an indication of being really smart.
Zada ngonde nganzu zenda chig yos gishi chig. Gishi konjong odrsa. Ngonde tan nganzu zenda ta yakshu chig chagorsra pesh. Ko pesha khadita na dos. Ko zugu semu sama chego ma khadina ke saja. Pesha lo andu pesha lo chen. Chego chiu yabu kors. Yaji yada maridasra.
One of Geshe's classmates, Geshe
Konjong odru.
Geshe Kunchungundup, is an exceptional scholar, right? So he did his studies very well, graduated exceptionally well. And whenever he was studying, reading his text, he was gnawing on his fingernails, so he didn't have to use any nail trimmer whatsoever. He kind of, whenever you saw him kind of reading the text, studying the text, there was always like a finger in his mouth. He was chewing on his fingernails.
Ko gishla de keju chigla ko shel nyepe kawarta. Ne ko pesha lo di she nyen gorta. Ko koyala pink de sa ko nganzri chigora. Ani semo de sa de an samlo shoch pi nembu shoch tangorda. Yasjada man charan pamani ki kolya roba chenira. An nanchu ki pi demba shedan demba ni. And said tisu tolayaji any puchinju ne and it is lavena pacha sing the jacha jatama yoba pu koran laya nganzu pu rikchi chikku tsitsi roch deg dasra rikchi pe chongbu chinjung kala chongbu chinjung kala labsha yudi kin jegma da ben nganzu roina chinjung kala ya ngak thola simsha yudi kadine jegmarista.
But there was also another thing that was quite peculiar about this Geshe. So on top of chewing on his fingernails, he also used to listen to music while studying, right? So he had like his headphones, he was reading a text, gnawing on his fingernails, and he became an exceptional scholar. So he said that actually at some point, he said that just listening to music while he's studying helps his studying. So anyway, Geshe reckons that you look like a smart boy. I don't know if it's now destroying all your education. Anyway, it seems like kind of, you seem to be a smart boy. So in general, there are those that kind of take advice for the parents, to listen to what the parents say. There are those that kind of, rather than do that, they muck around. But it seems like kind of you got things quite well, sorted under your belt, which is pretty good. It's really good to use whatever you can in order to, first of all, study well and also become wise, because become smart.
Nas danganzu kazin samnima kazin imak lamrim samtinima shugi sira nganzu samdi shibakosun tuji chili drubadang gyumi chiba ni samja tamjela pendoban zebo ten duji nguni te ronan tumbi doja te punzo tang matre bata gubale matrama mebe geba roba tamje ngeba zebo sonso se tini sare.
So during this set of teachings, we've been looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation, his milling presentation of the states of the path of enlightenment. So currently we're looking at the topic of refuge. So of the topic of refuge, we've covered the causes for going for refuge. Then we covered the section that identifies the cause of refuge. Now we're looking at the way that you go for refuge to the objects of refuge. And in that, we are covering the section that explains how we go for refuge through knowing or understanding the good qualities of the objects of refuge. So the last section that we've covered in the previous week was explaining the excellent qualities of the Buddha's exalted activities, what we call enlightened activities. And it says, by means of both, so we read that in the previous week, but let's just do it again. So by means of both the spontaneous and the uninterrupted exalted activities of his body, speech, and mind, he benefits all beings. In fact, insofar as disciple is fit for guidance, it is impossible for the sage, for the Buddha, not to give that trainee what is excellent and pull him out of his degeneration. That is why it is stated that through his actions, he certainly performs everything necessary.
디 제보부 장관놈 중거부 첨부 다 참이 킹그러스 장관놈 중거부 첨부 다 공롱안에 비기에 아니 개인 그 동바 시체네 드니 진짜 공롱안에 있는 간지 추기고래 슈체 아니 추기 다 장바디 고츠 나체 아니 고스텔이야 오늘 단내기 기둥이 된기 끼었다 딘디치 차요로스라 디 아니 친주 코네 아니 rab도 총샤주치 데니 베나 다 콩기 뚝사기 조디 공불루 야슬라 소바 딘딜이야 아니 뚝요레스 아니 베나 공불루 따위 임바나야 친주 코네 아니 부 친주 코네 아니 rab도 총치 아니 산지기 줄 랍샤와치 라 다간지 아니 단디 잘해야 단 잠블리 나와야 다 용수 착댕인기 아니 라마 체슈디 아니 겨울무지 차고레스 겨울무지나 공롱난 미치니 아니 다 겨울군디 쪽선 비기 아니 양실래야 원생 체체니 아니 rab도 총 아니 출랍신다 아니 키비 양지 som바치 차요로스 아니 겨울무지 군디 담보디 겨울 겐든 트위임바이나야 공신존네 공롱가니 두스 총샤도스 아니 나랑기 비기 룽가 익섬 떼서기 아니 게르무치나 공롱가니 아니 밤에야 아니 타월을 주지 라부도 존네 딘디간자 딘자 부친주 코니 아니 답하마 최대 명이다 아니 자기 명이지만은 고 내술로가를 뭐 딘디 영이지만은 친주 코니 자발을 쭉 만드나야 비기 추 내든 가리 임바디 아니 랍니로 그런 냠디 장야디 빼 마스와 개침부 인사레스로
So Lama Tsongkhapa, the author of the text that we're studying at the moment, began his Dhamma approach when he was 5 years old. So he entered the Dhamma, he took upon himself the vow of approaching virtue, what is called the lay vow. When he was 5 years old, he entered the gateway of the Dhamma. He studied the Dhamma and became an accomplished master, an accomplished scholar, an accomplished scholar. So not only that, he also sought ordination at a young age. So he studied the writings of the Indian master Nagarjuna and his spiritual masters, and he became a master of their writings. So just like you could say that in some sense, he was following the footsteps of the protector Nagarjuna, the Indian master, because Nagarjuna also sought ordination and began his study from young age, also around the age of 5. Also, when we think of contemporary lamas, contemporary masters, you can say that probably for us, the one that we regard as the foremost is His Holiness Dalai Lama, who also began his Dharma path when he was 5 years old. So it was recognized as a reincarnation of the previous Dalai Lama, the 13th Dalai Lama, and recognized as such from young age, and began everything at the age of 5. Also, the 7th Dalai Lama, Gendun Drop, also started his path when he was Tambo. Okay, sorry, not the 7th one. The first one, Gendun Drop, started off when he was 5 years old. And also the one that Geshe relies upon with his body, speech, and mind, his precious teacher, also was sent by his parents to become a monk when he was 5 years old. So, of course, if one's parents don't have any contact or faith in the Dhamma, if they have no means or ability to do so, that might not happen. But it is more likely to happen if you grow up with parents that have contact with the Dhamma, that do have faith in the Dhamma. So in light of that, Geshe reckons that if you grow up in an environment where, for example, your family or your parents do have faith in the Dhamma, it is likely that through the words and guidance and advice that they give to you from young age, your life will also be evolving. You will be growing up around the Dhamma.
Penata Buchinjung Koni Penata, Zenda Tambuni Chinita, Piki Love, Tenichi Lojong Zodi, Tajik Penjur Ra, Penjur Satan. Tajik Sonja, Kanji Tsin Digi, Suzuki Pichik, Penjur Drutangi, and Miyu Taduati, Tsin Digi Chavale Shijani, Lojong Kanjang, Jabana, Bugudi, Salon Chondi, and it's Tsin Digi, Suzuki Togu Tamsum. Tenlaya, and some Shukchambu Tandadi, Ransing Chagros, the Chagros Ra. The Takuchi Pig, Yolonda, you do that, Tindi Chabagati, Kolobjon the Trego Yanaya, did the Yamdu, and a chick, Nanzuchi, some Lugi, Kasodaji, some Lujachambu Yoyak, when an inji the Chanju Samse to so. And kitchen boy and Deniaji Sherap Piggy, and you Nilu Tolia, Cheba Chedan Soba, to so Lavina, and put the Chimbu Chawandigi, and Ditolia, some down 2 inch Chagras. The Madutang of the Chimbu Chaza did, and she Nitapi Kangaro Che, Makiba Chong, and Dinti Kaudulaya, Tajik Piggy Chair Johnson drawn digi, and he Yachimbuch Shima Tuya. There's the Shinaya, Dilamsan Suji Piggy. Comshi nimba the dogma to che, and it chug kanshimba dig sosulaya mapping sort of, and the digitally and chug pendom do someday, locked kill so samalo, and it can't dindle denda, young over the seweros.
So in our system, we are sent to an education system from young age. It seems that you can say that to a certain degree from year 1, we're being trained in a particular way. If our training, if our education is geared up to giving us tools for life, in the sense that is gearing up to making sure that when we leave school and we seek a job, then we can take care of ourselves financially and we'll be able to make enough money and so forth. In that sense, you can say that if the orientation is such that it is oriented towards whatever we can get in this lifetime only, then naturally, it might be that we'll later on be inclined to do just that. In that it might be that because our education system conditions us to think of the affairs of this lifetime only, we'll be mainly involved with seeking food and clothing and social status, social interactions and so forth. And of course, our education system is needed. Of course, it's suited to a certain time and a certain place. But together with that, we also want to make sure that we use more means of educating our mind to make our mind more extensive, to make sure that the way that we think becomes broader. Otherwise, and we do that with supplementing whatever we study in our school system with the training in loving kindness and compassion, even bodhicitta, and also the development of wisdom. So as we grow up and we follow our education system, but we also learn or know how to develop loving kindness and compassion and wisdom and so forth, we will know better how to think of different affairs that we encounter. Otherwise, if you don't learn those tools of dealing with your own mind, and at some point later on in life, you might experience problems or difficulties, and then you will turn your mind towards the Dhamma. It might be that, first of all, you find that it is not easy at all to train in the ways of thinking of the Dhamma. So first of all, it will not be easy. On top of that, there might be some difficulties because our mind is affected by negative habits that we have acquired before. So the older we get, sometimes the harder it is to train the mind if we're used to certain negative habits. So that will also come in between ourselves and the training. And on top of that, it might be that we will still be beset by doubts. Like, for example, thinking, is it really helping my mind? Is the Dhamma really helping me? Is it not helping me? And so forth. Then if we have such doubts, of course, our progress will also be inhibited.
그래서 드디는 뭐 보도의 샬네스, 기시 보도의 샬네 양양 섬나 이 제체다 규 제다도 손이 전랍 중스 대라양 이 신입이 힌타번이 겹손디 디 랍절라 롭섬나 지지 탐지 산지지 최자와 찍든기와 옌데스 그걸 산지지 캠발라 momon no shu samdeya mitsiwa songos.
So then the next section is expanding some supplementary points with respect to the contemplation of such excellent qualities. So the first point is gaining certainty regarding the conviction, the cause of going for refuge purely. And in relation to that, Geshe Potawa said this: if you keep contemplating it again and again, the firmer your conviction and the purer your continuum becomes, the more blessings will arise. By gaining certain knowledge in this regard, you will go for refuge from the bottom of your heart. And then if you merely train in the trainings, everything you do will become an instance of practicing the Buddha Dhamma. Then we continue with not gaining conviction, and it begins with saying we do not even value the Buddha's exalted knower as much as we value an accurate female fortune teller. I don't know, yeah. I guess it's very Tibetan statement. Yeah. 이제 마모 딜라
뭐마 생인데 모장에
이제 딜라디 인치게 돌아디 마모사 키멘식 된지 교사 띵은에르베
뭐마 생인데 제 모장에가 아마게모 또 베베 나올라 여다 베나 셴발이 찍진 얘기를 베베 나올라야 모장에도 달수 쉬죠라스 아니 비 타발라마이나 모자고레 미자포마이나 모자고레 뽀뽀모모이나 모자고레스 디지디 카시 지금 모두 테이블을 삼살라야 지 아니 테이블을 총에다 딘디기 지 아마게모지 왜나 아마게모지 모자는 모 테이블을 총왜나 다 쉬우지 드니 미도서 텔레 주체 아니 모자브체 아니 디직 라고도 디직 샵된 세고로 디직 비직 세고를 난다 티페 베스 쉬우지는 타직도 해야된디 연구요레스 디소레스
딘디라 몰라든데 숙차든데 지기요 백 겨갈레 페나디 폴레 몰라든데
딘디도 좀 델 짜치무 쉬우즈거다.
Okay. Now here it says the translation said a female fortune teller asked Geshe what the go with that is, and he said that in Tibetan culture people like divination. So lamas can make divinations, lay people can make divination, men or women can make divination. So in that sense, everyone can do it. But sometimes those that reach an older age attain a certain status, right? So some people regard their divination to be more stable or more accurate. So this statement is just, in some sense, just a random statement. So if you go to an old lady to do a mode, to do a divination, and you regard whatever you say to be really accurate, then she becomes really influential in the area. She can become really influential in the area. So many people will kind of seek more divination from that person, and they would regard whatever she says as being very important. So if she says that you need to do this puja and this prayer, then people try to follow that to the latter. So I ask Geshe if there is if old ladies divinations considered to be better than old dudes divinations. I guess I said that there's no difference. This statement is just a random statement, right? So rather than kind of reading too much into it, it's just kind of, it says, if you do not even value the Buddha's exalted knower as much as we value an accurate fortune teller.
chile yongi pepe shija nangala ya ama tama singers trap up thing ama trap house the mochi bu mai ba mechi pigila ya ji thongson don da chegorda a ji moja ka ji thongun don da chegora be meduzo ji ama tama sidi peketa rojora ani nga pi ta pamal tu sare susu phayila ta dronye thogora da ani ni pas jami shonzal ya pas kashi shun ramaso ani imagine yange pas shya chedo ni amatsala mochi ya ndremba tema tambodi mochi ya ndredi tene chi amamora pi chedo jigal de tene dula chi sha nga pi del dego dra ta de nga ani susu thawari chi yora dangar je ti o de dinge marang chasara tene amadi sanji chozo sanji chozo sig de tabuchi mudra tene sem da chi chomaso ya udra tene amadi do sta chi dra anchara nangda chi mudusa takawchi shen chocho chen do sira chana chen nangda khormus pasra ya nga dro zero jasa.
So Geshe was born in Tibet, but he's made his way to India as a refugee. So he settled at Sera Monastery in South India. And around the monastery, you find there is a Tibetan settlement called Bailakupi. So in the Tibetan settlement, there is a woman, Amatama, who is considered to be like a really good fortune teller or really good in doing more divination. Everyone kind of praises her for being so accurate. So Geshe he lived in India for 3 decades. And as he left Tibet and all his family was left behind, he sought a few times permission from the Chinese embassy in India to go back to Tibet and visit his family. So you have to apply for a travel document, to apply for a visa of some sort. He tried it a few times and he never succeeded. But in one of the times that he went up to Delhi to try to convince the embassy to give him a visa or to give him a travel document, he went to see that woman at the Tibetan settlement, Amatama, that everyone swears by a name, that she's like an excellent teller. So he entered into her room, and she was sitting on this kind of big throne. She indicated to Geshe as a monk kind of to sit kind of on the foot of the throne, and Geshe said that, well, it was a little bit awkward, but anyway, she began with reciting the verse for going for refuge, and it seems that she didn't really get the words completely right, and then no, she kind of pretends, or people say that she's clairvoyant, that she has this special thing. So kind of, she did it very expertly, and she put her, she did this gesture in front of her forehead. And then she said, I saw a white horse. I saw a white horse and this is excellent. You're definitely going to get the visa. So Geshe went up to Delhi and it was ceremoniously refused. No, he got a stamp in his passport that it's never going to be allowed into Tibet.
어디 다 진짜 단단다 노쇼라야 아니 모장을 쉬우 쓰댕이 다르기도 하서라 딘디촌이 지기어서 말했어. 로 산지점된 디 탐지 캠바랑 아주 카즈 쉬워나지 다 고손투고 연데마 아니 존디게 산지 캐주디 다 제스바로지라 다 딘디 고손투고 연덴지 여데나 디 송샤주디 난즈다 남메서르시 아 땅도 왔어 땅도 왔어 다 비기 모장이 지글라바이나 아니 저거 가시도 뭐 지금 뭐 잡스 땅이 샵된 치고 비기를 지 푸고 가르치고 베데 horta 바다 치다스티 딜리 딘디지 모두 아니 산길이야 진통 매바이나 아니 산지기 칠럽디 수술은 죽세데 딱 카부 쇼지로 왔어 로게시 보도에 뜻은 것도 왔어 따라와
And anyway, it seems that as Tibetan Buddhism is now moving to other places outside of Tibetan society, then some people also develop great affinity with asking for more for such divinations. And Geshe feels that this is not actually, it's not that good way to proceed, right? So it's not, Geshe doesn't feel that this is something that we necessarily need to take on. It's good actually maybe to leave it to Tibetan society to do what they do and not to develop those habits of going for such divinations. Anyway, when it says that, because here we're looking at the qualities of body, speech, and mind of Buddha. So we speak about those qualities to such a great extent, but then even if we appreciate those qualities, we often tend to ignore or disregard the teachings of the Buddha. So how it's going to work out for us if we kind of do speak about those qualities of body, speech, and mind and still disregard the teachings of the Buddha or ignore them? So we might go for a certain divination and we might get a certain advice regarding certain things that we need to do. We might have to do a puja, we might have to make some offerings and so forth. But if we have no regard or no consideration to the teachings of the Buddha, is it going to work well for us? Likely not.
라다 비기 모장인디 최저진 라고라스라 모장인디 최저진 라고다 망치야지기다 양고 끼우 담바 삼지 메케부도 내수 로가레 티마도 다지 나다 모자바이나 최저랑레 마도비 야치자담 요마레스 산지 좀 된디 우스 시친 아니 코랑이 켄친 시니 아니 나졸라 송샤바지로스 다디 오늘 지나 다티 야자야담바이자 다디 가르치고 줬나 아니 소소 센dim무고지 솔르다는 로고 줬나 다 오늘 지나 드라이브 잠레고 되는 아주 찌투고만 왔어 찌마토가 가르치려면 산지기 최대 아니 비길이야 신이 대버터버지 마종위 균센 조 디차고 알았어 진짜 산지기 최래야 산지기 최고 전랍지거나 비기 거는 뭐 소나 생기 소수 이 제기다 규체다스라운디 비 아니 뉴무투스 명르도야 잠년지 잔주고 셈비 돈이도비 따발로 소바 아니 지 간주 용작 비라야 가워치 데서 신내들 항동 or 딘주 오늘 전에 고고여나 산지 추려야 장니 신이 대버터버지 고기도 하스라.
And this is it seems that what Potawa is referring to in this section. So it is not to say that the whole Mo system is an absolute disaster or no certainty whatsoever. There are those that do have an insight into reality. There are excellent beings, holy beings that can be accurate in the reading of reality. But then for other people, those that haven't reached that high level of development, there is no certainty. Like, for example, Geshe says that he can make a divination, but it's not that his divination is accurate. It's not that they are certain. It's not that they're based on that seeing of reality. But the Buddha gave us teachings based on an insight into reality, based on his seeing what is actual. And whatever we take up in our practice, we do it in light of the teachings that the Buddha gave. And even if it comes to giving up our own life for the sake of the practice, then we develop the willingness to do that. And still, you might find in your mind that you have some resistance to for doing that. And we often have that resistance for putting it into practice as the Buddha taught, because we haven't developed faith that is an informed faith that is based on understanding or knowledge. The purpose of the teachings of the Buddha is to reduce our afflictive states of mind, to reduce our anger, our attachment, our ignorance, and so forth, to develop loving kindness and compassion and bodhicitta, to develop wisdom. So if we find that on a personal level, our affinity with the Buddhist tradition involves with increasing those positive states of mind, developing loving kindness and developing compassion, developing wisdom, then what we need to do then is to make sure that first of all, we build a knowledge base, that we build an understanding so that the faith that we will develop in the Buddha and his teaching would be an informed faith.
Terda, yang kau dengan kita penangaran roh jimbaina, cetang ye mo, yang itu kele matu ya diri ngar nyamnyong yoris. Ini yang ngarang genrung bucigi, camu jambadi, ngar jaja jata ma iksi yos, yang di, roh gengi camu jantan dan drag maris, drag mentus roh. Ani geng koran sungguh ngi, ani mo jawandi kashi tinga jagore ani kashi ani show you jagores anganzu geng la ya show jore geng gi show di kores ngala korangi mo ta nge yu yo marda show pandel hamran su dende shujin pandel hamran yu yordas no tro yo mar sangro te drawda geng chamut ngonne tan shoot te gu yores ro.
As Geshe made those comments on the Mo divination system, now Geshe says that he himself, he doesn't have a lot of faith or trust in, different people doing those divinations, but he did trust the divinations of his teacher. Not just trust him, he was 100% certain that what his teacher came up with was accurate. So there are different ways of doing those divinations. You might use a mala, a rosary, certain rosary to do this divination. You might cast a die. Geshe's teacher was doing it with a die, and he said that when I'm doing those divination, it's not that kind of I close my eyes and I just throw a die. It's rather that I invoke Pandin Lama, and I invite Pandin Lama to be the one that is doing the Mo. So don't think about it as me doing this Mo divination. It's actually Pandin Lama.
Nimajila dana gain ya tebachi deng mesanji ore mesanti gi pamani chi ani bugudu chenbu chaja konzo len pawa de peshi ta lo trukju ya men roji insares ani pawa de dela ya burto mawash tu dela burto mawash jemba khakiman khakereman ani dim burto den nima khashi droso teschi nebu rojindu again chamuch kyoros shuson gengi chamu gyoni and chamu gyoni geng shabden tis chegudu da sons shabden dit shabden chik chesonsra an konzu man drosi di genga yapu mandusa yapu kyun mandusa ngandilazra tini donta khashi jela ya konzu yanjal lechini mengang droi cancel resegdu pawa dawa khashi mo degmar segdu sa amji
There was one day that a family came to see Geshe's teacher, Genrin Rinpoche, and so there was, there were parents and also children. The father in that family was about 60 years old. He had a sort of a sore on his face, and he asked Genrin Rinpoche about it, and Rinpoche, Geshe's teacher, told him to do a certain puja, but once they left the room, he turned to Geshe and said that this is not good at all. You know, the result of that divination was pretty dismal. So a few weeks later, they came to see that teacher again, and they said that they visited the hospital. The guy was diagnosed with cancer, and it was terminal cancer, and it was given just a few weeks or a few months to live.
예, 어디로지? 인자 캐나도 못 잡니 정해요나 못 잡단지 그랬어. 아니 랍차스라 못 잡단지. 못 잡단 거의 전부지 나눠라야. 거의 전부지 나눠라야. 이제 자마치도 티가는 쇼여라. 쇼섬도 샤. 아니 제야 뽕. 디디샤로아. 다디니 반달라모기 쳐버든디어다. 어디진다 니마지라야 튀시데 아니 반달라모 비기 따지 접대마 세즈다 어 딘디 생각을서 반달라모 지어라 디 아니 니마지래야 튠시산도 사사진 데 간잠 지래야 아니 쇼든 드원디 쇼디 코라 란징 제디 칼이야 대용구여 세버스 데 템바이나 다 테니 몰라야 아니 트로치 요머 세버스 디마도 아니 모자야디 그는 가능한 모자야 좀 차고르스
All right, I'm going to make him more now. Anyway, Geshe said that in the system of divination, since we're already speaking about it, just let's just spill the beans. So, so normally what you would do, there are different ways of coming up with those more divination. But if you do the one that Geshe was referring to, that is connected with Pandin Lamo, then you would have a bowl, right? So a flat bowl. You would fill it with rice and you would put inside 3 dye. Dye or dice? Dice, 3 dice. Is dye singular or plural? Plural, 3 dye. Then there is a certain sadhana and practice manual connected with Pandin Lamo. In Indian language, by the way, the name of Pandin Lamo is Sri Devi, right? So there's a certain practice associated with it. You do it 4 sessions a day. Then there are also some mantras and recitations associated with this practice. Now, if during this sadhana that you first of all use in order to prepare or consecrate the whole more divination mechanism, if the dye kind of all of a sudden surfaces up on top of the rice, it means that you're ready. If that doesn't happen, it means that you might kind of do more divination, but it's just like a fabricated more divination. So Geshe said that, if he, for example, does a more divination and he uses that system in which there was no kind of indication that the dye has come up, then it's just probably just a poor way of doing a more divination.
대단히만 대송다 다 몸은 노시 시기 달로 켜라 좁차메 니시세네 덴볼진로 대나리 달로 착치 늦숨긴 디마치센 벤드 마두는 디게세 니 마두냥 로메데와체 상기긴 데던 디기 데던 디트부시 제발라 롱겜 마두는 로메데와 옹업 최니 대게시에 다다 유두기 대축 무뚝 늦축 제그 세대 상기기 송르스 보니 장시 지기 토든 로와 인송데 마다 냠가와점 식점라 추어먼바 이낭도 로니 십도 따나 신도 매번 나고스 대나 상기기 용대야 양 삼라 인타바니 니버 지종란 베디 대중 대강리 중에 최당 최드집이 견단라야 니버 대단자고 농위 겸준내든 졸라 대면은 람신 따셔 겹순저와 이코 온사메토스.
Anyway, so we first of all looked at gaining certainty regarding the conviction, the causes for going for refuge. And the last line in this section says, if you merely train in the trainings, everything you will do will become an instance of practicing the Buddha's Dharma. But we do not even value the Buddha's exalted Nor as much as we value an accurate fortune teller. Lama Tsongkhapa says here, of course, coming from like a Tibetan perspective. So if an accurate fortune teller tells you, I know there will be no bad luck for you this year, you walk away happy and comfortable. If he or she says, this year there will be great misfortune, do this, don't do that, you will try hard to accomplish it. And if you do not accomplish it, you will think, I did not accomplish what she told me to do, and your mind will be anxious. If the Buddha says, do this and that, accomplish this and that, do you take it on? If you do not accomplish it or practice it, does your mind become anxious? To say, from the point of view of Dhamma, those words may be explained as follows. Due to place and time that is inconvenient now, I must do this. Is to ignore the Buddha's statements and proceed on the basis of your own understanding. If you turn the mind inward and examine this in detail rather than being unquestionably happy with that examination, befuddled by the mere words, it will strike you as very true. So insistent advice to achieve certainty says, therefore, think about the Buddha's excellent qualities again and again, and make an effort to achieve as much certainty as possible. If it develops, you will have arrived at the main point of going for refuge, because a similar certainty will come concerning the Dhamma that we have received from him and the Sangha of those who have accomplished that Dhamma. Without it, there is no way going for refuge, a tame mind, let alone other paths, will come either.
Yes.
No.
Terdadina dodo karsungu dos laundi sangi song delaya shuji ki lote tu mewa ro ani chi odindich ki imbayna ani sangi ki chugi chinlap sanamandu sangi ki chupi sangi ki lamdun namchebi lamdun di tone yang rochene ani suzugi ani taji loja chir roya ani chi gyut tar royal sobadi ta yongmaris ro yongmaris ani ichi chindu mundu ani sosu tebayna ta hakosare roch ro tirendo da.
So we read through this passage, but if we try to narrow it down and think of what did Lama Tsongkhapa say here, well, it says that with respect to the Buddha's speech, which means to say the teachings of the Buddha, mentally we rely upon the teachings of the Buddha. If we do not rely mentally upon the teachings of the Buddha, we will not receive the blessings of the Buddha Dhamma. We will not receive the guidance along the steps of the path that the Buddha gave us. We often speak of expanding a mind or purifying a mind stream. Without relying upon the teachings of the Buddha, we will not expand our mind, and also our mind stream will not become purified. So then, looking at our own mind, since our own mind is not hidden to us, we can examine our own mind and assess to what degree do we trust the teachings of the Buddha. Do we trust them or do we not trust them?
Terdadi zo di karsana sangi chue mashindi ani chue tembo bo sangi yonden tongmaros sangi kusuntu yonden mandonna ani sangi la ya ani deba yungmaros ro deba shukchen wi ke tugmaros sangi la deba ki maduna ani sangi kan dembi chue di ro chue dia chue la ya ije yungmaros ani chue nyamsleng genden la telija ichi legmaros ti malena ani pi logic semjiki pigilaya ani redu chayagi ani camro sayadi yungmaros kanji yi khul thungegi ani camro chik yonsa yogmares te medigi ani chegu nyamlen ting saboch pa shane ani go thangbo camro lodya yagbuchi yungmares ro.
Which means that if we do not recognize, if we do not see the good qualities of body, speech, and mind of Buddhas, we'll have no faith. Faith arises through seeing their good qualities. Now, if we have no faith in the Buddha, we'll also have no faith in the teachings, the Dhamma of the Buddha. We'll also have no teachings, we'll also have no faith in the Sangha. Which means that finding a sense of reliance upon the three objects of refuge will not occur, will not have the sense of reliance upon the three objects of refuge, and therefore, let alone not being able to make a practice become deep or profound. The very gateway to the practice, which is going for refuge, even that will not come to pass.
그래서 디스 땅안조 산지기 출래야 주구연자 아니 지 피기게 카미 야다스나만도 쪼디 아니 산지기 출디 경경 낭인게 아니 페변 넘버 라마 넘버 디디다 안조기 송디 아니 제요리 아니 그 응우스다 아니 제투거라스 다 드솔라야 드솔라 카미 야다 지고야 두 제온디게 베나 산지기 출디 아니 yang tabaji su peliore su son yoreslana gagargi pendru sore dosta ra zo di ta nganzu yong starting ta nalandragi ani pendru tigidi ko tranga karisungu yana pendru chubden sungu yana gendu choni sungu ani kanji ani nalandragi pendru tigidi ta ngone thani sanji gi chusul yana menadi ani konzu simcheni ani ma yitola pamni 단단한 잠블린 나라야 즉 산지기 취제요디 소 디즈레도스라.
But also in trusting the teachings of the Buddha, we also have those that we look up to. We also trust their teachings. So what we refer to is the excellent masters that came from the Indian tradition. So we look at those excellent masters that have protected the continuity of the teachings of the Buddha. In that sense, they've nourished or protected the teachings of the Buddha. What we refer to is, for example, the masters from the Nalanda tradition. And there are different ways of accounting for the masters that came from the Nalanda tradition. We might speak of the 17 Pandits of Nalanda, or a group of them that is called the 6 ornaments and the 2 supreme scholars. Whatever way you're going to look at the scholars and account and list them down, the main point is that they have provided an extensive body of writings explaining the teachings that the Buddha gave. In that sense, they've elucidated, gave an extensive explanation of those teachings. So if we're looking at for someone that we can rely upon, someone that we can look up to that has protected those teachings, and those are also writings, teachings that we can learn.
Redizione pena jagar kita cik ani pendru kita cukien tawdi gombuludu kong cikrewa serwa ani gombuludu gisong cedang pe mambu shochik serwa ina dinang kita cik ani dom deshu dawdi serwa nenga yonsu zawa tsutden dengindi ani riksok chuk chagores serwa namaz kengo ya riksok chuk peji inji tolo yiri ani riksok chuk nang pena tat 조디 산지점된디 최디 아니 탑시 니 돈은 로고야지 로 탑의 세름이 탑디 조디 아니 다 잔주sem리 잔주sem그 자와디 인지리 로 아니 인지 자와디 아니 비게 다진 냠지 고메라 소바 어 디차그도 딘디그 럼바디 고물루두 그 소트그 난게 오마린신 참에 나로라야 우마린진저 마부키요 말에 배 마시버 시부 돔데부 송요레스라 어드소라 제치니 아니 직 탑톤 초기 아니 인지의 전주sem그 냠내 제단디 삼로단단디 가리임바디 아니 데니 술렌투게 소졸스 아니 셰르고 초기 다 동반이 된들이 동반이 꼴이야 엄마 자와 셰르블레 사지 쇼지 메바디 야체 야담바리스 디 아니 지 소슬로종 세 토메토니 내가 고툭마도 용스그마도 들리라지요 말스 어 드솔라시 드소 니마타바 데 아니 디 탄다도 콘도 취해지도 몰람게야 아니 쳐바부야 소사야 두 세바이나 아니 람 탑시 니디 아니 랑귤레 기야기 탑이 약슈데 디차고 와서레스로.
And of those great masters of the past, those great pandits, the crown ornament of all those masters is Nagarjuna. And Nagarjuna produced a vast number of writings, but of them, you can say the main writings they produced are collected in the collection of 6 texts on reasoning. Mainly, what they explain are method and wisdom. So the method side is involved with the development of bodhicitta. And the root of bodhicitta, which is compassion. And the root of compassion is based on practices such as equalizing and exchanging self with others. So if we seek to develop an understanding of how to develop the method side, one of the texts that Nagarjuna composes called the Ratnavali, or the Precious Garland, which provides a clear and concise explanation of the way to develop the method side, bodhicitta, compassion, practicing equalizing, exchanging self with others, and so forth. And then on the other side, we have the wisdom side. The wisdom side has to do with emptiness, the wisdom of emptiness. So explaining the root of emptiness is found, first of all, in the pivotal text of Nagarjuna, the root of wisdom called prana. So we can, if we seek to develop a good understanding of wisdom, this is, you could say, the foremost text that we can rely upon. So whether we can actually study those teachings or not, it is up to us, up to our personal situation. But at least in assessing what our goals are, if we want then to focus on our study, to do some study, recitation, if we want to make offerings, if we want to accumulate the collections, purify negativities and obscurations, or what have you, if you want to make our practice to become an essential practice, then those things that Nagarjuna spoke of in his text on the method side and on the wisdom side offer us the very essence of the teachings that constitute our practice.
Reda dire tiza tang gombuludu gi ani jesu ya dronge gombuludu gi ani pita chigriso chugi gomba chuse uchene ani chenge zo di ani leben papa sanji kyanda ani konzu chagdos ani konzu ta bi ani shonta pe mambo ta tizo sekto bana shu yagbo resro ani penam buda palda soba oma shibge bal soba oro 아니 빼 약보르스다 간지 빼 마시바 아니 학도들 다지 곰불루루기 비기 자워셔다 오마른진 참아 니가기 아니 탑시기 네된샤와디 수세우 진땡인디 아니 반데다와 잡아 반데다와 잡아 다 저럼지 뒤따도 송고다다 간지 오만주바 오만주비 나로라야 니가 오만주바슬라운디 오만 죽바세기 찌디 죽세디 죽사디 피 오마디 오마 짜와셔럽레 샤니 안 델야 죽수스 치온디 아니 사바다 갸치비 니구고니 마 아니 짜와셔럽 고마 데당 토니 아니 민디 오만 죽바세 민디 타고레스
Så den jobber kabdela den de number gær ketcherve amna nongla zue ketcherve
제 짜와셔럽 kalero 짜와셔럽 kal야 갸치비 람기 름바디 아니 다 무스 소메완자 디 아니 삼밀람기 름발야 넘비견 니가 셰비 찾는 거지.
So we mentioned the writings of Nagarjuna, and of them we have the collection of the 6 texts of reasoning. So after Nagarjuna came his chief students, chief disciples, masters such as Aryadeva and Buddha Parlita. So they've studied the teachings of Nagarjuna and also composed explanation commentaries on that basis, and they are excellent texts to study as well. So the writings of Buddha Palita and 400 stanzas, for example, of Aryadeva. These are excellent texts to study. So in Nagarjuna's writing, as we mentioned, those two texts pertaining to the method and the wisdom side. The method side, the Ratnavali, the precious garland, and the wisdom side, the Mula Madhyamika Karika, the root of wisdom. After Nagarjuna came an Indian master that is called Chandakirti. And Chandakirti composed a few texts. One of them is the supplement to the Middle Way, in which he mainly explained Nagarjuna's root of wisdom called Prajna. Now, in the supplement to the Middle Way, what Chandakirti did was, first of all, the Middle Way is referring to Nagarjuna's explanation of the root of wisdom. So that's the wisdom of the Middle Way. He supplemented that with explaining also the way of development, to develop wisdom, together with following the steps of the vast and extensive path, which means the method side. So in that sense, what Nagarjuna did in his root of wisdom was focusing on wisdom. Chandakirti came after that and took his explanation of the way to develop wisdom and supplemented it with an explanation of the steps of the vast and extensive path. And therefore it is called the supplement to the Middle Way.
Yongdagi chanju sengvita nyamlengi tse sundengendi ane leben shivala tsigoros ra leben shivala gi song kecheshu di ane chonjuk chemo ra nganzu chonjuk chemo da nganzu bigi ane zindan drogu yanza da manche zog drogu yanza ane chonjuk chemo ma ane da nganzu jawon digi 다 진소 파신 잔주 선비 쥐어발은 죽슬런데 잔주 선비 쥐어버들이야 아니 진소 파신 죽이 냠는 지야디 잔주 선비 쥐어버 돌드나 진소 파신 죽이 냠는데란도 왔어 다 진소 파신 죽이 냠는 난단디 마 송디 티나는 빼나 아니 가정안주다 something levels 또 something 들어야 아니 신내다 아니 땡인진의 신내 아니 딜 때문에 and that Langdong Jizu Rumbadi and it's Levigiba something living on Mason Digi Namking on the Yondragi and the same Nibi Tab Godan and the easy true Sobasin and the Shene Drudan Di Masomba Shene Drudan Mixer Chechin and Sungudos Ra Tilda the Jagar Penrusugi and Shene Di Kandachiton Drugu Yobadi Gumbuludru Yapsela Soba. The something level at Tebaina. Any shiny drew tongue. Shiny the condition drew you may. Shiny the courage you may. And dinalas the Nanga shoes dengudosra. Thing on the inching machine goes.
So then we mentioned Nagarjuna and a couple of his disciples. Then after Nagarjuna, of course, came other masters. One of them who completely embodied the practice of bodhicitta was Shantideva, the Indian master Shantideva. And Shantideva also composed different texts, but the most important one is Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara. And this is what we have been studying for last year and a half here at the center. We are actually drawing closer to the end of studying Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life. So this text, Shantideva's Guide, is focusing on the practice of bodhicitta and the conduct or the practice of bodhicitta, which is summarized as the 6 perfections. So whatever bodhisattvas do is summarized into the 6 perfections, such as the perfection of generosity. So we have been looking at this text. We've covered the 8th chapter of this text, which is teaching how to develop absorption, or in Indian language, dhyana. Now, in this chapter, what we're actually dealing with is the development of shamatha, calm abiding, and the development of samadhi, concentration. So when we look at the progression of those teachings, then first of all, we develop calm abiding, we develop our concentration, it becomes a calm abiding concentration. And then on that basis, we develop next special insight or vipassana. There is a common way of explaining the way that you develop calm abiding, shamatha. So often you find in the writings of the great masters the reference to the 9 mental placements as stages, as methods for developing the concentration of calm abiding, which also involves with the 6 attitudes that you develop. But here in Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, rather than teaching that in details, he takes another approach, which is special. So when we look at the writing of the Indian masters, such as Nagarjuna and so forth, and how they explain the development of shamatha, and then you compare that with what Shantideva did in the 8th chapter of his Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, you see how he was actually quite unique, very special in his approach to the development of calm abiding. If you want to know what makes this explanation unique, for what end do we develop shamatha, or concentration, it's good to look at the 8th chapter. It becomes very clear through Shantideva's explanation the way of developing shamatha, calm abiding, that it becomes very special or very specific to this context.
어디래자 딘다 두속이 쇼케 첨부 두속이 아니 단다디 수 domjam 라 마세우 스니 아니 땡라 평행기 쇼직디 먼저 단다 로데 람름 딩디 자차 자담 찍차고레스 라 아니 자란주 람름 딩디 설직니 마임바 설 망부 로체 안디 탕라야 상로타 아니 직 소소 하마고사디 아니 비 메셴발에 깨제티 되네 하고야디 양니 양도 아니 상로타 콤드지 땜바이나 레 켈증마링한 사말로 콤드지 땜바이나 아니 단지 송대야기 산지기 땜비 님보디 람 탑시 니기 또비 용된디 아니 무고스 lav나야 랑기 줄야 아니 깨용야지 차고레스라 다 디마임바 딘디 톨야 상로치야 마다니 안치 산지기 추에 비 물럼도 잡 아니 덤바도 데 아니 두 신도데바나 칼카부 쇼치 라 타게와다 요르다이나야 간지 람 탑시 니 또비 용된디 랑귤레 끼야디 칼카부 쇼치 차고서라스라 디 메나 아니 간주 탈 심장 탐지기 된 산기바 쇼세야기 물럼디야 아니 동바 개메주 라 요야 메주치 어딘지 레드 도스라 간지 디상로 슈탄 고서레스라.
So we mentioned some of those classical texts. Another classical text that we're studying is what we're studying here, this context during the Friday morning teachings. We study Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation, middling presentation of the stages of the path to enlightenment. So when we study this text, it's not that we do it only once or twice. Reading it only once or twice will not cut it. What we want to do is to read it again and again, not only to read it, but to think about it, to study, to think about those texts. And also there will be points that we will not necessarily understand clearly. So we ask questions about points that we do not understand, we gain an understanding, we think about it, and then we take it on into our meditation. And through that, we extract the essence of the teachings of the Buddha, the essence of method and wisdom, to the point in which if you follow this process by which you study this manual again and again, and you think about it, you remove your doubts, you put it into your meditation practice, even if you say that my goal is not to develop realization, I don't need to develop realizations. Through this process, realizations will arise in your mind stream. So if we don't follow this process, and Geshe also includes in that in saying that if we don't follow this process, we might then base a practice on saying different prayers, doing different recitations, and we cannot say that those things are not good. Those things are not virtues. Of course, they're virtues, but then if you think that just doing that will allow me to develop realizations, qualities of realizations, it would be quite hard. It would be quite hard, quite difficult to think that you could develop qualities of realizations of the essence of the Buddha's teachings if your practice is solely dedicated to just saying prayers or to doing some recitations.
Sangila kubachiba gyunzendu chede sangi yonde tayiba jendene londo ji chön gobada lamji demba gyen pambada yonden dribi danyi ji ngondu chebada gombali chongo nyamdu tembarchade chö yantabar dibi tenos.
So we looked at the excellent qualities of the Buddha. Let's look at the next section, which explains the excellent qualities of the Dhamma. On account of your respect for the Buddha, you should be mindful of thinking. The fact that the Buddha has limitless excellent qualities arose from his manifesting and meditating on the Dhamma of scriptures and realization. True cessations and true paths, the epitome of the abandonment of faults and the achievement of excellent qualities. That is the intention of the compendium of the teachings. That's all. We will leave the text here for today. Have you got any questions? Jonah, welcome back. Is there a particular text to read for the root of wisdom of Nagarjuna? You mean kind of the root text or commentary? All right, something in the library. I don't know if the library contains the root text. We can check. I mean, of course, it's available in Tibetan, but that's not going to help, I guess, many of us. So whether we have the full translation of Nagarjuna's text in the library, I'm not sure, but it is available through the FPMT. So there is a kind of translation that is used for the study programs at the FPMT. So we can certainly, I think, certainly, we can make that available probably. Maybe, possibly, maybe.
Yeah. That's
all right, let's leave it here for now. So we will finish up with the final Lamrim prayer. On page 339 in the Golden Prayer Book. For my two collections, vast as space, that I have amassed from working with effort that is practiced for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds, wisdom, eyes blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all lives on Jushu. May I find the best of complete graded parts of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means drawn by strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path as I have discerned them. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going up with great compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or one spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and may the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by even this graded path enlightenment completed due to the wondrous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all humans and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtues practices, may always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. Thank you.